Welcome, I'm Michael Bickert. Thanks for joining me today as we explore concepts with the objective of improving your management skills and growing your business. Grab a notepad, grab a pen, because as usual, I want you to make a commitment that you will jot down some notes and jot down some kind of action item that you will implement in your business today. That's what this is all about, driving your business forward. Today, I want to talk to you about values, not value. We've talked a lot about value and the constituents of value, that being the value that you offer the market in your product or service. Today, I want to talk about values and core values. Now, don't tune out. I will share with you that when I first was exposed to this, I can't even remember when in my management career I was first exposed to the notion of consideration of core values, core organizational values. But I know that my recollection anyway is that the pundits, the experts, I might have been exposed to it through various readings or seminars and this kind of thing. And I kind of always had a feeling of, oh boy, it seemed like something that was just not that valuable to me, ironically. And I decided eventually that when you're trying to improve, you should consider things that don't just naturally occur to you. In fact, that's what I'm trying to do when I share these ideas with you. Some of these things are intuitive, some of these seem obvious, others you've heard before but you've done nothing about. And one day I decided, you know what? I'm going to listen to the experts. Maybe there is something to this notion of core values and the relationship it has with culture and so on. So I'll put in some effort and let's see what happens. And fast forward, I can tell you, it took me a little bit of time to implement and to, within the organization, get it going and get some traction. But afterward, I was so glad that I did it. There's the spoiler alert. I'm very glad I did it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be passing this along to you. This is all about making you more effective, driving your business forward. So I compiled some notes, some things that I thought of that were instrumental in helping me implement this idea. And I want you to try to make a commitment to do this. If you, just like me, are skeptical and you're not sure, you think I've got 100 other things, 1,000 other things that I could implement that are more important than this right now, that may be the case. And we've got a video that talks to you about how you should decide which things you should implement first and sort of plotting your ideas and that kind of stuff. But there is diminishing returns. You're not going to always have great big ideas. And ironically, I would say this is one of those great big things in your, it's not an idea, it's not a novel idea, but this is the type of thing that will have a great impact on your organization. And so let's go through it and see what you think at the end. And again, don't worry about going from 0 to 60 as fast as possible. Just take little steps to implement these types of things for improvement in your business. I'm going to make available some downloadable notes that'll be completely free for you. And I'm going to endeavor to convince you of the value of doing this, in implementing core values, giving some consideration to it, going through the exercise and the effort with your organization. I'm going to endeavor to convince you of this by going through, the W5, the who, what, when, where, why, and also some how. So that's how I've sort of organized this. Let's get started. Okay, we'll start with the what. And what are values? What are we talking about when we say core values? So the first thing here, by way of definition, I've got up on the screen, intrinsic and desirable traits or characteristics that help to define organizations. That's what we're talking about. That's what you want to think of when we talk about core values. Also, they are reflections of the priorities, beliefs, and paradigms of key organizational stakeholders. So these are things that are really core to who you are. That's where the term core and the core values come from. And the value is that they are valuable, they're desirable. These are things that you want to be intrinsic in your organization. So you're going to give some thought to that. They already exist, whether you realize it or not. We're just going to talk about defining them and how we can use these for leverage in your business. The next thing about what is they serve as guidance for management, governance, and decision making within organizations. So that's a really key concept to wrap your head around, is that as we talk about leveraging core values in your organization, you'll realize that they will serve you as guidance, as a roadmap when you're making policies or when you're making decisions, when you have difficult decisions, when you feel like you're up against a dilemma of some sort. You can refer to your core values and they'll be very valuable and instrumental in helping you make those decisions. The next one on the list is they will lead to desired culture through adherence and disciplined practice. That's what this is all about. So we can agree that you'd like to have a specific culture of your organization. Anytime you've experienced symptoms where it was an uncomfortable environment that maybe the team was experiencing, this is really a description of a culture that you don't want. And we can think about, well, what culture do you want? What would you like to see? If you had to describe the ideal culture for your organization, what would it be? Well, it starts with the core values. Your core values, discipline, practice, and adherence to those core values will lead to the culture you want. That's, I guess, the main way I want you to think about your core values. A key thing is that, and I always insisted on this, there's no sense if these are going to be superficial platitudes, just things to which you and your management team and your organization, other stakeholders, your team members, they just pay lip service. And it's like, oh yeah, we talk about these things, we've got them in our company handbook, but they're not real. If that's what it's going to be for you, there's absolutely no point in continuing. And that's kind of where my headspace was, is I thought, I've heard about organizations having core values, but what does it mean? What does it really do? And that's what I mean when I say they should not be superficial platitudes. Next, let's look at who. Who in your organization should be involved in defining your core values, and who do they affect, and so on. So the first who is organizational stakeholders, and we've defined those many times. So, the owners, of course, and management team, basically your whole team, whether we're talking about your internal or outsourced labor, any kind of people that are involved in your day-to-day operation, also your vendors and suppliers, and your customers, and your surrounding community. These are all stakeholders. So ultimately, bear all of them in mind and maybe even consider their input from all of them when defining your core values. Now, maybe there are some people on this list that you're not going to engage when you are, going through the exercise of defining these, but I would certainly give consideration to all these people. And this is why. Because values align stakeholders and expose poor fits. So that's something you want. What you'll have once you are, well underway, implementation of, getting your culture in place through your core values, this will serve rather to expose those poor fits. So maybe you're dealing with a vendor who doesn't believe in the same things your organization believes in, and that you've defined as this is who we are. Or maybe you have customers that don't like what you like or whatever. And you might say, well, Michael, I'll take every customer I can get. Customers are very valuable. Yes, of course they are. But there will be sometimes that there is money that you're not prepared to accept because it comes at the loss of something, your integrity. If it means that you're going to have to sacrifice your values, then you won't do that. And that's one of the things that values do. And so when we talk about the who to implement, who to consider, the values can serve to actually expose and separate. So you might have people in your organization who do not believe in the same things you believe in. They can be toxic or poisonous, sort of cancerous to your organization, where they spread negativity all over the place because they don't buy into your values. So that's one of the great things about values. And when we talk about the who, I would focus on that. Next, we get into when. And when is like, well, when should I implement these? When should I reference these? When should I promote these values? And the first one about when is from inception. So perhaps you're putting together a business plan, you're starting a new business. This would be a great time to, especially if it's just you, start to think about, what are your values? What are those intrinsic things that define you? What are your belief system? What do you want your business to adhere to in terms of core values from the beginning? And if you're having a business partner, other partners, other stakeholders from inception, you want to get them involved as well. And if not from the beginning, then now. Better late than never. I mentioned earlier that you already have values in your organization. Everyone has values. These are priorities. These are things that reflect the belief system and the paradigms that individuals have. Now is the time to define those things if you haven't taken the time from inception. So it doesn't matter how old your business is, how long you've been doing this, you will benefit. Remember why we're doing this. Everything we do is in our own self-interest. You're going to be able to use the definitions that we come up with, the well-defined core values, to leverage opportunities in your business and to make things better for you. So if you haven't done it up till now, now is the time to do it. Also, you should do periodic reviews of your values, because things can change. And I don't want you to think, as you go into this with the exercise, I don't want you to think, well, if I didn't do it in the beginning, then I shouldn't do it now. And the second thing I don't want you to think is, once you've done it, it's chiseled in stone. You cannot change your core values. We're not going to have an exhaustive list of core values. Of course, there's going to be many values in your organization that don't make it into your final list of core values. And periodically you will review and you'll see, well, did we choose the right core values? Was there something we should add to the list? Do we need to modify for whatever reason? So, that's part of the win. Also, during major transitions, and I've got listed a few here, certainly change of owners, change of management, change of business model, or change of market conditions and external forces, such as maybe the major legislation changes that force you to have to pivot in how you do business. Whenever you have major transition or change, this is time to revisit your core values, if for no other reason to make sure that you're adhering to them, but also if something has changed that requires and should give consideration to changing your core values or your definition or your short list, then these sort of major transitions and changes are a good time for that. Next thing I have on here is at every opportunity. And what I'm saying there is you should reference your core values and promote them at every opportunity. And that may sound like an exaggeration, but it's going to be critical in trying to develop the culture, to try to lead to that culture. So when should I promote my core values? At every opportunity I can. And there's practical ways to do that. We'll get into that. Next, let's look at the why. Why? Why should you bother with putting in any sort of effort to, defining your core values and what we're talking about today? The answer to all of these questions is always the same thing: in your own self-interest. Everything you should do is in your own self-interest. I truly believe that. You acting in your own self-interest will drive your business forward, and it'll improve things for everyone. So that's the first answer to the why. And here are some examples of how that works. As you're providing better clarity and greater operational ease, I will tell you that when you start to be able to internalize these core values, and they should be sort of internalized to begin with, but as you sort of memorize them and they serve as that roadmap, that mental map for governance of your organization and management, they provide clarity in moments which can otherwise be confusing, or like I said, you might feel like you're at a dilemma or a crossroads. You just revert back to the core values, and they provide that clarity for you and operational ease, where it's like, all right, well, this is a tough one here because I don't know what to do in this situation. Go to your core values. And I should be giving examples with this stuff. I didn't want to make the video too long by giving examples as we go through on everything. But, if you say as an example that honesty is one of the core values for your organization, and then something comes up where it's tempting to not be honest because you might get some sort of windfall or a great deal of revenue, profitability, or you could avoid having a major expense or having some kind of catastrophe occur or looking bad. You could prevent embarrassment by not being honest. Well, your core value would say, no, you can't do that. It provides that roadmap again, and that guidance provides the clarity and the ease of management. It's like, no, we won't do that because that's not a core value, or it's inconsistent. It's at variance with our core value. Another one is it attracts like-minded talent to your organization as well as customers. So the more that you create this culture through your core values, you're going to find that people who also are attracted to those core values will be attracted to your organization. And you want to attract good talent, and certainly customers as well. You want to stand out in the marketplace. And when you really are good at adhering to certain core values, it will start to spread. People will start to notice, and you'll benefit from it. And everything is in your own self-interest. And it prevents duplicity. And that is to say, you don't want to try to be all things to all people. Let's see here, like in my example of honesty there, it's like you can't say you're honest and be duplicitous. You can't say you're honest and then make several decisions that aren't honest. And we know from Matthew 12:28, any kingdom divided against itself is doomed to fail, and any house or town divided against itself cannot stand. So think about that. There's a reason for this. There's a reason that this is stated in the gospel. You can't be duplicitous. You can't try to believe one thing and do another. So this is again in your own self-interest. You want your kingdom to stand and prosper, and so you can't try to be duplicitous, and that's one of the areas that core values will assist you with. All right, moving right along, we're at where should you promote these core values and reference them? So the first thing I have is at all organizational events. So yeah, I'm talking anything. You've got your own list of, maybe you have Christmas parties or you have award ceremonies. Whenever you have the opportunity and your team is gathered together, remember what you're trying to do here. You're trying to instill a particular culture, and you want these values to be adhered to. And so talk about them at all organizational events. What about during meetings? So you have all different types of meetings. You may have management meetings or sales meetings. You have performance evaluations. Any kind of meeting serves as an opportunity to promote and reference the values. So maybe you have witnessed in a performance evaluation, in my example of honesty as a value, that would be an opportunity to say to somebody, if they had been outstanding and you have an example of where they've been very honest, you could commend them on that. Conversely, you can hold them accountable and administer some sort of consequence if they haven't been. And in management meetings where you're discussing major challenges and strategies and that kind of stuff, always reference back to your values. So meetings are a good place to do this. In all your organizational materials, so that might be internally your newsletter, your handbook, things like that, your standard operating procedures, reference your core values. So you might have a newsletter and you might say, in consistency with our value of honesty, the following blah, 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 blah in your newsletter. I'm sorry to be a little glib there. But consider in all of your company materials and in your memos and so on. In your marketing materials, again, whether it's your website, your email campaigns, or your advertising, you want to promote your values, not just internally to your team, but also to your customers. Remember, you are going to retain like-minded talent and attract new like-minded talent, and the same with your customers. You are going to retain customers who believe in your values. They're like-minded, and you're going to attract new customers, conquest new customers. And how? As we wrap up, I'm going to tell you how to do this. What should you do to get started, to get these core values in place? The first thing you need to do is solicit feedback from all the stakeholders possible. And you can do that in virtual gatherings or in-person gatherings. You should put some sort of digital mechanism together for submissions, for mass collection. So not everybody can always attend a synchronous meeting in which you're going to discuss these things, but you want to make sure that all of your people, especially if you're going to include some of those more secondary or tertiary stakeholders such as vendors and customers, if you're going to solicit some feedback from them, then make sure they have a digital mechanism. You're not necessarily expecting them to show up at a meeting, an in-person or virtual gathering where you're going to discuss this with, say, the management team and that kind of stuff. And you want to incentivize submissions. So there's great ways to do that. I'll do a whole nother video on creating incentives for your team, but you can have some fun with this. So consider a contest that everyone who submits some core values for consideration to the management team is entered into a draw. And if and you get so many points for each submission, you get so many more points if they make the short list, and if it ends up making it to the final cut, you get so many more points, and then those guys are entered into a draw, and everyone gets entered into the draw, that is, and those who have more points get more chance of winning the draw. You get the idea. Have some fun with it. Try to incentivize people. Let them know that you care about their submissions and their feedback. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to amalgamate similar values. So what's going to happen when people submit their ideas for core values? You're going to get things like trust and honesty. And you might say, those are very similar. So we believe in trust, trustworthiness, and honesty, and people, they submit these things and communicate them or express them in different words, but they all are kind of surrounding the same concept, the same value. So amalgamate those things so you can go just by amalgamation of similar values from maybe 100 ideas, different things that are put forward by your stakeholders, down to 50 or maybe even 25, something like that, by amalgamating things that are very similar. So you might have another example might be, well, teamwork. We value teamwork here. And somebody else says, well, we value collaboration. Very similar, and so amalgamate those. The next one on my list here is to shortlist the top suggestions. So you've gathered up through this pipeline of all your stakeholders as many suggestions as possible for consideration. Then you amalgamated them into a smaller list based on taking those things that are very similar and making them the same, choosing your favorite word to express those. And then you're going to do a short list. In order to shortlist them, what you will do is you're going to rank the best. So, and I say you, but I mean whoever is the leaders in your organization are going to do this. So whoever you've delegated or is in charge of the final product here is going to do this. You're going to rank the best. You're going to go, for whatever reason, we think this one stands out more in our organization than that one. So you will be able to, using your own criteria, sort of rank things and go, this one's more important than that one or whatever. Once you've done that, you can then reject the outliers and any that are incongruous. So if you have something like, I don't know, I don't think anyone is going to put something dishonesty, so that would be, incongruous with honesty, but you get the idea here. Maybe you have aggressiveness or assertiveness as a value, and there's nothing wrong with those things, but it might be at variance, at odds with something else you've already chosen. So you're gonna have to reject some of them that just don't, fall into what you're ultimately gonna go through. So you've ranked the best, you've rejected the outliers, and then the leaders have to make a final decision. Hopefully you've been able to shortlist things down to a manageable amount. Maybe you're down to 10 and the leaders are going to choose the 5. I always recommend 5. Of course you could have more than 5. You certainly could have fewer, but there are so many values that, especially the bigger organization you have, I think there is merit to limiting it to 5, because you want people to focus on these things. And if you have too many values, it's very difficult for people to memorize these, and really instill them in your people in a way that is very meaningful. So the leaders are going to then take the task of sorting through the final list and choosing the final ones. Now, remember that this is not written in stone. You're going to do periodic reviews. If you need to change these at a later date, you can. So don't get too hung up on perfection with this, but make sure that it means something to you. Remember, I'm saying leaders here. The values, if we go back to the very beginning, we said that these are a reflection of the beliefs of those desirable traits and the paradigms of those people, those primary stakeholders in the organization. So you as a business owner, your top leaders in your organization, this should be a reflection of what you believe in as a company, because it's going to guide your decision making, and it's going to influence in a major way, hopefully, if you're doing this correctly, the culture that you achieve. And so it is imperative to put effort into this, but we've already said if you need to review this periodically, you should, and if you have to change, you can. So the leaders are going to make this final list, and then once you have your final list, it's imperative that you start promoting this every opportunity that you can. And we already talked about when and where you'll reference these and promote them. But you want to do this in perpetuity. Don't just go through the exercise and then sort of forget about it. It's like marketing. It only sticks. It only takes hold. You know, we talk about instilling this, you know, like dripping this into your people. You want this culture to take hold. It only works if you do this in perpetuity. You have to continually remind people of the importance of this. So again, let's get back to incentives. You can incent your people to adhere to your values, and you should, especially while you're getting this going. So how you can incent people, of course, you could, in the early stages, you could do a contest as well. But what about just simply recognizing people who are outstanding? We've already said that you could, you know, have some contests to incentivize submissions of value, but now when it comes to the practice and living of the values that lead to the culture you're trying to achieve, what about going out of your way to recognize those people who are exemplary in practicing the values? And there's all sorts of ways of pat people on the back, go up to them and say, hey, I noticed that, you know, you really were outstanding in the way you applied our value of honesty in that situation there, or respect. You were very respectful, whatever the values are. So incentivize people, make sure they know that you're paying attention and that you appreciate it. And then conversely, you want to administer consequences, hold your people accountable if they deviate from your values. You've got to speak up. You know, it's unacceptable if people are straying from your values. Now, there's such a thing as, you know, going away a little bit from a value, and then there's doing the exact opposite value. And you have to show people that you're serious about it, both through the carrot and the stick, so to speak. The degree to which you implement the suggestions in my notes and have strict adherence in practicing your values will greatly impact the likelihood of you instilling that culture that you so desire for your organization. So I really hope you'll give this a chance. Remember, you don't have to be perfect at this. Just get started. Think back to the beginning of the video where I shared my experience. I didn't have full buy-in. I went into this skeptical, and I can appreciate if that's where your heart is right now. But after doing it, I really found a difference. So you have to do this in perpetuity. You can't just sort of get the project started and then abandon it. I, in fact, did do that. And fortunately, I had a human resource manager who took the bull by the horns and said, look, I'll run with this for a while. So delegate somebody in your organization if you don't think you're the right person. This isn't making it into the top 2, the most important things on your list. Maybe there's someone else who can implement this for you because it's important. You should do this. I think that's where I want to leave it today. We've covered a lot, and I went through it quickly to try to make sure the video wasn't too long, but you got a snapshot now. You have a place to start. Don't forget, these notes are downloadable. Basically everything that I put up there in the slide deck, you can download this as reference material. All you need to do is enter your name and email address. There's no fee, and we're not going to spam you. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter if you'd like more tips and more content that can help you drive your business forward. And please leave some comments in the field below so that all of us as a community can learn from one another, because we need to learn from one another. Perpetual refinement.